thank you so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you during our live storm watch coverage. Here's why. Take a look at this. It is a rainbow of watches and warnings through Canada. We begin our story on the West Coast, where we are ringing in the first weekend of 2015 with a wintry start. Picking up on some rain through the South Coast, we have snow in the higher elevations. So Metro Vancouver, we are still seeing that mixing down by the harbor. That's where the rain continues. As we move into the evening hours, it will become more of a rain event with the warm front, but this is what we can expect for the day. We have snowfall warnings in effect for Williams Lake, the higher elevations. Further to the south, that's where we have our winter storm warnings in effect. Winter storm warnings and watches issued when we expect a variety of different severe weather, winter weather types to affect an area all at once. As we head into the higher elevations, the exact snow amounts that we are expecting, places like Kelowna looking at about 30 centimeters of snow. Further to the south, Vancouver, Squamish, that's where we're seeing about 5 to 10 centimeters of snow. And Squamish, that is where we find the lovely Mark Robinson. Mark, it's looking like a winter wonderland behind you. Happy 2015. Thanks so much. Stay safe on the Sea to Sky Highway. We do have some special weather statements currently in effect. If you're heading from Vancouver up towards Whistler, we could see significant snowfall amounts through the day. Driving conditions very poor. Now, as I mentioned, with that warm air coming through the evening hours, this will change over to a rain event for the South Coast. Places like Tofino, the western portions of Vancouver Island and into Vancouver, major rainfall, upwards of 90 millimeters of rain expected. Now, this Pacific system is translating across the Rockies and into Alberta. We are picking up on some of that energy. Calgary, we are expecting some light flurries through Monday, about 2 to 5 centimeters. And when we head up into the Rockies, ski, snowboarders, that's good news for you because plenty of snow on the way. But the bad news, cold temperatures. That is our big story as we head through the prairie provinces. Widespread extreme cold warnings in effect. And here's why. Look at some of these blue numbers. That's your wind chill, your feels like temperature. Brandon, this afternoon, your high is minus 26, feeling like minus 40. Earlier this morning, we had temperatures, wind chills approaching the minus 50 to minus 55 mark. Into Ontario we go. Snow squall watches currently in effect ahead of this week's potential lake effect snow squalls. But you know what? Better late than never. That's the good news. If you like what it looks like outside, not so good for driving, as you can tell by those highway conditions. Thanks for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you. Let's check in with our satellite and radar. The green, that's where we're seeing the rain. Higher elevations, that includes Vancouver. We are looking at that snow. Now, in terms of how much we can expect, generally through Vancouver, we're looking at about 5 to 10 centimeters, but through the higher elevations, the whites, that's where we're looking at 20 to 40 centimeters. So really extensive snowfall for this first weekend of 2015. But as I mentioned before, driving conditions really not great when we have falling snow, blowing snow. Special weather statements in effect for several of the mountain passes, including the Sea to Sky Highway. Squamish, that's where we find Mark Robinson. Let's check in with Mark for an update on the weather where he is. For you to send us your photos and videos, please do so at upload.theweathernetwork.com or find us on social media. This is the big story in eastern Canada. We have a convergence of systems. They met over Ontario yesterday morning, in Alberta Clipper with a Texas low, and we're looking at scenes like this into your Sunday as well. The system tracking east, freezing rain through the city of Montreal. We've seen that since about 3 a.m. this morning. This is likely to be a 12-hour event. Already about 20,000 people without power. As we track further to the east, northern portions of New Brunswick, that's where we're looking at the snow, rain to the south, and we're also looking at some freezing ice pellets. So driving conditions in those areas, very treacherous. You can see in an enhanced radar, Ottawa also picking up on some of that freezing rain. As we move into the evening hours, this system will continue to track east. We'll see some clearing evening, followed by very cold temperatures this week and into this evening as well. Currently, we have our freezing rain warning in effect for the areas highlighted in pink. We also have winter storm warnings in effect. Let's take you now to Moncton, and coming up a little bit later in the program with a live update for you. But here's what we can expect in the meantime for Atlantic Canada. We have rainfall warnings, snow squall watches, a little bit of everything. In terms of the rainfall, that is going to be most extensive through southern portions of Nova Scotia. But as we track into Newfoundland, that will be mostly a snow event for the afternoon. Moving into the evening, the warm front pushes up slightly. So through the extreme southern portion of the province, that's where we could be seeing some mixing. But again, as I mentioned, it becomes a rain story for our maritime provinces. Northern New Brunswick could be picking up on some freezing rain through the evening hours. But the snow that we're expecting before that, generally about 10 to 20 centimeters of snow. So really going to...
Yeah, first one down.
2 minutes 15 the game.
The West Coast as our storm watch coverage continues. In Canada, a wintry mix to welcome in 2015. Michelle Mackey joining you. We'll have more on that in a moment. We begin our story in Western Canada, where we also have a wintry system on the way. We have rain through the south, snow through the higher elevations, driving conditions along some of those mountain passes quite treacherous, and that is where we find Mark Robinson. Now, Mark, it's looking like a winter wonderland where you are. Can you tell us about the road conditions? Classic Mark Robinson, our storm hunter, always in the most active weather possible. We'll be checking back in with Mark throughout the hour. Now, where Mark is near Squamish, currently under a winter storm warning that extends further to the south, includes Vancouver, and also up towards Terrace, Bella Coola, the central coast. Not only do we have the rain, the possible mixing, but we have lots of snowfall. Here's what we can expect in terms of our amounts. Higher elevations, Kelowna, Kamloops, 20 to 40 centimeters of snow. The bulk of that snow falling through the day today into the evening overnight. The rainfall that will follow that due to a warm front, also quite extensive through the south coast. The reds, that's an indication of 60 to 90 plus millimeters of rain. Now, as we track across the Rockies, that energy does translate into Alberta. We're looking at snowfall to continue as we head throughout the day today in the city of Calgary, about 2 to 5 centimeters of snow. When you were doing this filming, because we are talking about temperatures in the minus 20s, but when we factor in those wind chills, feeling close to minus 40. The blues, that's your wind chill value. So frostbite, a very big concern when we have temperatures this cold. So if you're outside, do make sure you bundle up. As we track into Ontario, snow squall watches currently in effect. We have cold air funneling in on the back of the system that we saw earlier this morning and yesterday. Cold air over relatively warm bodies of water. See lake effect snow squalls. So we are looking at extensive snowfall amounts through the Bruce Peninsula through Monday, 10, 20 centimeters of snow expected. Our storm watch coverage continues here on the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you. Well, if you're wondering why we're in storm watch, here's why. Widespread watches and warnings that have been issued across Canada. Let's begin our story on the west coast, where we are looking at some rain to the south, but in Vancouver, some wet snow, snow in higher elevations, and as we track further towards Whistler, Squamish, that's where we're looking at a snowfall event. And Squamish, that is where we find Mark Robinson. Not yet. He will be coming up in just a moment. But first, let's take a look at some of the snowfall amounts that we can expect for the area. Where Mark will be coming up, we're looking at about 5 to 10 centimeters, but through the higher elevations, that's when we're looking at 20 to 40 centimeters of snow. And with all of this snowfall, driving through some of the mountain passes becomes quite an issue. Environment Canada has issued several special weather statements for some of the mountain passes where we could see 20 to 40 centimeters of snow fall by Monday evening. You couple that with blowing snow, lot to talk about. Driving conditions very poor. Now, as we track further to the east, we have a separate system bringing with it a wintry mix to central and eastern Canada. In Quebec, this is where we are looking at a freezing rain event. But with all of the rainfall, yes, it is likely to melt, but more importantly, the ice. Driving conditions, absolutely horrible. Please take care if you're on the roads. Further to the north, that's where we're looking at snow. But because of all of this mixed precipitation, we do have winter storm warnings in effect through northern portions of Ontario, also extensively throughout Quebec because of all of this mixing. And as we take a closer look at what's happening on the East Coast, this is where we're looking at more snow through northern New Brunswick. But the pink, not an indication of freezing rain through Atlantic Canada. This is more of an indication of freezing ice pellets and also some mixing, some wet snow. So freezing rain, not as big of a concern in that area. Let's check in with Nathan Coleman in Eastern Canada with the latest update. Great advice as always, Nathan. Thank you for that. We are looking at a few warnings in Atlantic Canada as well. And by a few, I mean a lot. We have a wide variety of warnings. We have wind warnings to the north, freezing rain warnings, winter storm warnings where Nathan is, and further to the south as we track into southwestern Nova Scotia, that's where it becomes a major rainfall event. Rainfall warnings currently in effect. Now this afternoon we are looking at rain through the south of New Brunswick as well, that mixing line further to the north. But as we track into the evening, the warm front pushes up along with that mixing line. But before we get into all of that rain, here's what we can expect in terms of our snowfall amounts. Through Nova Scotia, generally 5 to 10 centimeters. Further to the south, the rain melting that snow. But as we track into New Brunswick, that's where the snowfall really gets quite heavy. But the rain following, also going to be heavy. 15 to 30 millimeters through southern portions of Nova Scotia, generally less than 15 millimeters as we track into New Brunswick. But looking at Newfoundland, the biggest rainfall for St. John's, and this is going to be an issue because we do have very cold temperatures coming this week. So when we see the snow, which we will, make sure you shovel it fast because it's likely to become very slushy and then freeze. Here's what we can expect for our warnings through Newfoundland. We will have more on that coming up as our Storm Watch coverage continues. Well, thank you so much for tuning into the Weather Network as our live Storm Watch coverage continues. Michelle Mackey joining you, and we begin our Storm Watch journey on the West Coast. Let's check in with our satellite and radar. The green, that's an indication of where we're seeing the rain. The blue, that's the snow. And you can see we have a bit of a mixing line over Vancouver. We're looking at rain, wet snow through the lower elevations. Higher elevations, that's where we're seeing the snowfall. That will continue through the day. Currently have winter storm warnings in effect. Snowfall warnings further to the higher elevations, and in Squamish, British Columbia, experiencing all of this weather firsthand is our storm hunter, Mark Robinson. What's the latest where you are, Mark? Thank you so much, Mark. Doing a great job out there. You're a trooper. Here's what we can expect in terms of our snowfall amounts for British Columbia through Monday morning. Higher elevations, the areas highlighted in white, generally about 20 to 40 centimeters. But we do have warm Pacific air flooding the region. And through your Sunday evening into Monday morning, it becomes a rain event for the south coast of British Columbia. Quite extensive rain for places like Vancouver and Tofino. Now, all of this energy is tracking across the Rockies, and we are seeing snowfall through southern Alberta. Places like Calgary, we are looking at higher amounts, generally about 5 to 10 centimeters of snow through your Tuesday, but this will extend further to the north towards Reindeer, though we do have lesser amounts expected for there. But the big story through the prairies, not only the snowfall through Alberta, but the cold temperatures. Environment Canada has issued extreme cold warnings for most of our prairie provinces. And with temperatures like this, you can tell why. The wind chills, those are the temperatures in blue, approaching the minus 40 mark through today. They will be dropping as we head into the overnight hours. Meanwhile, in Ontario, snow squall watches currently in effect for places like the Bruce Peninsula, eastern shores of Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, and that is due to very cold Arctic air on the back end of this system over relatively warm bodies of water. Perfect combination for lake effect snow squalls. Stay safe. If you're sending us those viewer videos, safety is always first. Here's our satellite and radar. Lots of freezing rain expected for Montreal. It's been raining, freezing rain, since about 3 a.m. this morning. That is expected to continue as we head into the evening hours. So that freezing rain warning in effect, as is our winter storm warning. We will have more on your East Coast coverage coming right up. very poor on the roads, to say the least. We will be expecting some ice pellets through the afternoon hours, followed by a rain event into the evening. Now, this is what we're looking at currently for the east. We have a system. It's a convergence of systems. It merged over Ontario yesterday, and now the Maritime provinces feeling all of that. Here's an enhanced look at our radar through Montreal, Ottawa. Extensive freezing rain that has been occurring for the city of Montreal since about 3 a.m. this morning, and it will continue into the evening. Now, we do have that freezing rain warning in effect. We also have winter storm warnings in effect, and lots more warnings as we head into the Maritime provinces. We'll have more on that coming up with Kim McDonald, but first, let's take you further to the west into Ontario. Snow squall watches currently in effect ahead of cold Arctic air expected for this evening into Monday over relatively warm bodies of water. Spells the perfect recipe for lake effect snow squalls. But the big story through the prairies, of course, cold temperatures. Extreme cold warnings have been issued for most of our prairie provinces, with wind chills this afternoon approaching that -40 mark. Meanwhile, on the BC coast, lots going on as well. Winter storm warnings in effect. We also have snowfall warnings in effect. In terms of the amount of snow that we can see, higher elevations, that's where we're really going to be seeing that accumulation. So places like Kamloops, 25, 40 centimeters, about 10 centimeters on tap for places like Squamish. And that is where we find our storm hunter, Mark Robinson. Now, what in the world are you up to outside? We have special weather statements in effect for several of the mountain passes due to all of that falling snow. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Storm Watch continuing. Michelle Mackey joining you. The West Coast currently picking up on some rain. We're looking at snow in the blue, and you can see Vancouver is kind of right in the middle of it. That's because through the lower elevations, we're looking at rain, wet snow, and through the higher elevations of Vancouver, that's where we're looking at snowfall. And that will continue into the afternoon, but by the evening, warmer temperatures mean it will be a rain event. We currently have a winter storm warning in effect through the higher elevations, places like Williams Lake, a snowfall warning, and that is because we are expecting around 25 to 40 centimeters of snowfall by your Tuesday morning. So extensive snowfall through the interior. Good news if you were thinking of maybe going snowboarding or skiing, but again, driving there could be a little bit slow going. So give yourself some extra time. As we transition across the Rockies, we are picking up on this energy from the Pacific into Alberta. This is your snowfall forecast through Tuesday morning. Calgary looking at about 2 to 5 centimeters of snow. Further to the north, Red Deer right on that line. So we're looking at about 5 centimeters of snow. But as I mentioned, the rainfall for the south coast of BC, as we get that warmer air flooding the region, becomes quite extensive. Impressive amounts of rainfall expected. Tofino, Vancouver, 60 to 90 plus millimeters of rain. Now into the prairies, the story isn't the rain or the snow. The big story, the cold temperatures. Environment Canada has issued extreme cold warnings for the highlighted areas, and it's no surprise when we have wind chill values approaching the -40s this afternoon. Moving into the evening hours, those temperatures expected to drop even further. So do make sure to bundle up if you're heading outside. Into Ontario, snow squall watches in effect ahead of the cold Arctic air that will be coming into play this evening into tomorrow. So do make sure you keep an eye out for that. Places like Bruce Peninsula, we could be seeing 10 to 20 centimeters of snow through your Monday. Let's head to the East Coast now and check in with Nathan Coleman. Great advice, Nathan. Yes, I know a lot of university students heading back to school for tomorrow, so do be prepared for some possible travel delays. Now, he mentioned we're getting into that transitioning. That's what we're seeing in our satellite and radar over Moncton, the pink, looking at some ice pellets before we get into rain, along with warmer air as we head into the evening hours. But into Quebec, we are looking at freezing rain warnings for places like Montreal. This extends down towards Ottawa. And we also have winter storm warnings in effect because we have a variety of different winter weather that's coming, all set to affect one area at once. We'll continue our Storm Watch coverage right after this. Well, thank you so much for tuning into the Weather Network during our live storm watch coverage. Michelle Mackey joining you, and we begin our weather story in the east, where we have a low pressure system bringing with it a wintry mix, not only to Quebec but to our maritime provinces as well. But we begin in Quebec, Montreal, Quebec City. We are looking at extensive freezing rain. We have had freezing rain in the city of Montreal since 3 a.m. this morning. That is expected to continue into the evening hours. Slick conditions, treacherous roads, and that's a similar story as we head towards Moncton. Rain for the south coast. Tracking into Ontario, snow squall watch has been issued by Environment Canada. This is in the wake of cold temperatures that are set to make an appearance into the evening hours and into Monday. This is what we're looking at on our radar right now for southern Ontario. So we do have some light rain just south of Toronto towards Hamilton, but for the most part clearing up. But as I mentioned before, a very different story as we track further towards Ottawa, Kingston, just out of that winter storm warning, but Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City, all in both a winter storm watch, or a winter storm warning, pardon me, and also a freezing rain warning. So we have lots going on in central and eastern Canada. This is an enhanced look at our radar for what's happening through the maritime provinces. The pinks, that's where we're looking at freezing rain, ice pellets, some mixing. Green to the south of Nova Scotia, we have rainfall warnings in effect. We could be seeing 20 to 40 millimeters of rain by the time this system rolls through. But further to the north, places like Fredericton, that's where we have our freezing rain warning in effect. While in Newfoundland, the big story is the wind. Both in the Avalanche and the western shores of Newfoundland, we have wind gusts that are expected to pick up from the southeast over that 100-kilometer-per-hour mark. So very windy conditions through that province today. But as we head to the west coast, this is where we have a separate system rolling off the Pacific Ocean. You couple that with a cold shot of Arctic air, and we have winter storm warnings in effect, snowfall warnings into the higher elevations, and that is where we find our very own Mark Robinson in Squamish, British Columbia. Mark, what's the latest outside?
Snow and lots of it.
This is why we have a Pacific system that's rolling in. We have rain to the south. The warm air will be pushing in as we head throughout the afternoon hours, but we still have some lingering snow through higher elevations of Vancouver. And as we get further into those higher elevations like Whistler, that's where the snow really begins to pick up. We also have snowfall warnings in place. We have a winter storm warning in place as well. Lots going on, lots to talk about. And outside, we find Mark Robinson experiencing all of this winter firsthand. What's the latest where you are? Absolutely, Mark. Perfect way to put it. The most trickiest place in Canada to forecast, and that is all because of the elevation. So stay with us. We'll keep you updated on when that rain is going to come. But as of right now, we're thinking it's going to be into the evening hours. But before we get there, we do have special weather statements in place for several of the mountain passes, including Vancouver up towards Whistler. Squamish, that's just where we saw Mark Robinson. Driving conditions quite poor with lots of snow on the way. Up into the higher elevations, we could be seeing 25 to 40 centimeters of snow through your Tuesday morning, but the rain that I mentioned earlier pushing up into the evening hours. Warm air, lots of rain. The reds, that's an indication of 60 to 90 plus millimeters of rain. And with the snow followed by the rain, we do have quite a high avalanche danger rating on Monday and Tuesday for places like Whistler and up into the Rockies. A very fragile snowpack, so do take care if you're heading up for a ski or snowboard. Now, as we track into the Rockies, the big story, the cold temperatures, widespread extreme cold warnings, and this is why, with wind chill values approaching the minus 40s, that meets the criteria. And that's what we're also seeing as we head into northern Ontario. Let's now head to Quebec. Ice just freezing on the car. So driving conditions not ideal. It's been freezing, raining in Montreal since about 3 a.m. this morning. It continues through the afternoon, but it is tracking east by the evening hours. But places like Quebec City now picking up on that freezing rain. So you can see we have a freezing rain warning in effect. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network during our live Storm Watch coverage. Michelle Mackey joining you. And if you're wondering why we're in Storm Watch, well, Here's why. We have watches and warnings issued for nearly all of Canada, but we begin our story on the west coast. This is our satellite radar, and we have rain in the green, so places like Victoria really getting into some heavy rain, but you can see as we head to Vancouver, it's a rain-snow mix. We're seeing snow through the higher elevations, rain down near the Vancouver Harbour, and as we move into the evening hours, warming temperatures means we are likely to get into more of that rain. But here's your winter storm warning that is currently in effect. The areas highlighted in yellow includes Vancouver and Squamish. And further to the north, Williams Lake, that's where we have our snowfall warning in effect. Now, this is all thanks to a system rolling in off the Pacific. You couple that with a cold shot of Arctic air that rolls in through the overnight, and we are looking at wintry conditions. But like I said, that warm front is coming as we track into the evening hours. So precipitation along the south coast, lower elevation, certainly expected to turn into rain. Now, as we head into the interior mountain passes, that's where driving conditions really become troublesome. We have special weather statements in effect for the areas highlighted in purple. That includes the Sea to Sky Highway, Squamish, and that's where we check in with our storm hunter, Mark Robinson, looking like a winter wonderland, but I'm sure those road conditions not so nice. And that is only going to continue into the evening hours. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you. All of that freezing rain thanks to this system. You can just see the size of this low pressure system when we look at the overview on our radar. It's a combination of a Texas low and an Alberta clipper. They've merged over Ontario, tracking east. Let's look at the enhanced version of the radar. If I could just get April to just help me along with the clicker, we'll take a look at the close-up view because we really are seeing that freezing rain stick around through the afternoon hours. That's why we do have a freezing rain warning in place for places like Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City. Another big issue with this, the winds. The winds are picking up. Ice secretion, winds, they don't go well together. Looking to the east coast now, we have a wide array of warnings in place. Freezing rain warnings in Fredericton, Moncton. Further to the north, that's where we have our winter storm warnings. And as we track into Nova Scotia, that's where we have rain warnings, expecting about 30 to 40 millimeters of rain by the time this system passes. Now, tracking into Newfoundland, also a lot going on, and this is ahead of the system. We have wind warnings in effect for the southern portion of the Avalon, the southwestern tip, Wreckhouse included. Looking at gusts from the southeast over that 100 kilometer per hour mark. And as we head to the west coast, we have another system to talk about. That's why we're in national storm watch coverage. We have a winter storm warning in effect for the interior of British Columbia, the south coast, and a snowfall warning as we track further to the north. Driving conditions along the Sea to Sky Highway, not ideal, and that is where we find Mark Robinson. Now, Mark, what's the latest where you are? You look like you are really feeling that snowfall.
You said the conditions are not ideal on the Sea to Sky. That sort of is a good way of saying it. It's quite bad on the Sea to Sky.
Thanks so much for tuning in to the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you, and that is where we begin our storm watch in Atlantic Canada. You can just take an overview of this low pressure system to see how big it is. It's affecting southern portions of Quebec all the way out to our maritime provinces. Now, one of the big stories we need to talk about before we get any farther, the freezing rain in Montreal and Ottawa, making for extremely slick road conditions. I know a lot of university students heading back to school in preparation for classes tomorrow. You may want to give yourself some extra travel time or hold off altogether. Tracking into Ontario, the story becomes snow squalls. We also have wind warnings in effect. Those westerly winds set to pick up through the evening hours. So places like Wyerton, Barrie, that cold Arctic air over relatively warm bodies of water, we could be seeing quite a few centimeters of snow beginning through the overnight hours. That Arctic air I mentioned has also warranted extreme cold warnings in northern Ontario, portions of Quebec as well, as we approach that minus 30 mark when we factor in the wind chills. We're also looking at winter storm warnings. We have freezing rain warnings in effect. And as we track into Atlantic Canada, it's really a rainbow of warnings, you could say. It looks pretty on the map, but not so pretty outside. As we track into southern portions of Nova Scotia, that's where we have rainfall warnings in effect. They have extended a little farther up. We could see upwards of 30 millimeters of rain throughout the day. Here's an overview of what we can expect for Newfoundland. Wind is going to be the big story as we head into the evening hours, with gusts from the southeast over that 100-kilometer-per-hour mark. Meanwhile, on the BC coast, we have winter storm warnings in effect, snowfall in the higher elevations, and that is where we go to find out what Mark Robinson has been up to. It looks like the snow has really picked up. Mark, how are you feeling outside? Are you bundling up? Hours, which means road conditions are going to be treacherous. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you. Here's what we're looking at in terms of winter storm warnings. It is quite widespread, includes Squamish and Vancouver. Further to the north, Williams Lake, that's where we're looking at a snowfall warning. Now, because of all of this snowfall, followed by the rain that we're likely to see through the overnight hours in the lower elevations, we do have a high avalanche danger rating for Monday and Tuesday as we track up into the Rockies and the interior mountains of British Columbia. So do take care if you're heading up for a ski and snowboard. Be aware that these ratings are in place. Now, we do have quite a bit of snowfall. Here's what we're looking at in terms of the numbers. Places like Kamloops, the areas highlighted in white, that's where we're looking at 25 to 40 centimeters of snowfall through your Tuesday morning. You can imagine driving through some of the mountain passes when we have this excessive snowfall becomes quite dangerous. Now, the rain I was talking about, as that pushes in with warm air through the evening hours, we are looking at quite extensive rainfall, 60 to 90 plus millimeters for Tofino, Vancouver. And as we track into the prairies, the big story becomes the cold. They've spread into Alberta now. You can just tell how cold it is looking at that video, can't you? So here's the extent of our extreme cold warnings. And this is why. The blues, that's your wind chill value. That's the feels like number. Places like Regina feeling like minus 41. And as we move into the overnight hours, that is bound to drop even more. We also have these extreme cold warnings in place for northern Ontario, stretching into Quebec now as well. Through the evening, we're beginning to see very cold Arctic air in behind a low pressure system that's tracking east. Thunder Bay feeling like minus 38. Let's take you now to the East Coast, where that system is really making an impact. We have freezing rain in Montreal, Quebec City. It's been doing that since about 3 a.m. this morning. So we already have about 11 millimeters of freezing rain. There will be more as we head into the afternoon hours. Let's head to New Brunswick and check in with Nathan Coleman. Thanks so much, Nathan. Freezing rain. Yes, that is the big story this afternoon as we head to Moncton, Fredericton. Further to the north, that's where we have our winter storm warnings in effect. While in southwestern Nova Scotia, rainfall warnings in effect. We could see 30 to 40 millimeters of rain by the end of this system, by the time it tracks east. While further to the north, this is our overview of what we can expect for Newfoundland. We have wind warnings currently in effect. That's your yellow, looking at southeasterly winds exceeding that 100-kilometer-per-hour mark. Stay with us. We have more on your Storm Watch coverage coming right up. From the west coast to the east coast, nearly every province has a warning of some description. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you as our Storm Watch coverage continues. Here's a bit of a taste of what we have across the country. Let's begin with what we're expecting through Ontario. Snow squall watches and warnings are in place for much of southern Ontario. We have westerly wind that will be blowing across the lakes, the Great Lakes that are not covered, cold air above, relatively warm air, warm water, surface water, and that is the perfect recipe for lake effect snow squalls. Now, one of the places currently under a snow squall watch is Stratford. That is where we find Kasia Baderka. Now, Kasia, has the snow started yet? How are you feeling outside? Thanks so much. Yes, lots of chatter on social media. Do make sure to connect with us via Twitter, and you can upload your photos and videos to upload.theweathernetwork.com. So she mentioned the snowfall up towards the Bruce Peninsula, Owen Sound area. That's where we're going to get the most extensive snowfall due to these snow squalls, upwards of 15 centimeters of snow. As we track into Quebec, Montreal currently under that freezing rain warning. We have 60,000 customers over that amount without power in the city of Montreal. So it is quite A serious situation. We will keep you updated with everything you need to know throughout the hour. As we track into our maritime provinces, a lot going on. We have a rainfall warning in southern portions of Nova Scotia. Further to the north, freezing rain warnings in effect. Also having some winter storm warnings. A little bit of everything. Let's take you now to the scene in New Brunswick. Thanks so much for sending in the video. We always love it. Let's see what we can expect for Newfoundland. Now, Newfoundland, you are really going to start feeling this system as we move into the overnight hours and into your Monday, but we already have wind warnings in effect. We have winter storm warnings, freezing rain warnings. The winds, that's going to be a big issue. Through the evening, they are coming from the southeast up into Newfoundland, and we are talking about winds sustained between 40 and 60, but Monday afternoon, they will increase, and we're talking about gusts over that 100-kilometer-per-hour mark. Driving conditions, not ideal to say the least. Live radar, we have rain through the south. Vancouver picking up on a rain-snow mix. We'll have more on your Western Canada coverage coming right up as our Storm Watch coverage continues. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you. Let's check in with our radar, our satellite. You can see the green. That's where we're seeing rain. Vancouver still in the middle. It's got snow in the higher elevations, rain to the lower elevations. And we're also picking up on some freezing rain as well. But snow as we head up into the higher elevations is going to be quite extensive. So much so that Environment Canada has issued a snowfall warning for places that include Williams Lake. But other than that, widespread winter storm warnings. Here's why. We have a system that's rolling in off the Pacific, and as we get into the evening hours, because of that cold air, it starts to snow earlier today, but you can see this warm front pushing in, and that means that the snow likely to change over to rain. But how much snow can we expect before then? Well, the white, that's an indication of higher amounts, 25 to 40 centimeters of snow in through Metro Vancouver. We are out of that bigger range. We are looking at about 5 centimeters of snow for the most part. Again, through the lower elevations, not quite as much. But the rainfall that we are expecting into the evening hours will be quite heavy, 60 to 90 millimeters of rain through your Tuesday morning. And as we track up into the higher elevations, all of this precipitation does mean that we now have a high avalanche rating. So if you're heading up into the Rockies or the mountains for a ski or snowboard, do be aware of that. Meanwhile, in Ontario, wind warnings, snow squall watches and warnings, including the city of Stratford. And that's where we find Kasia Badurka. Kasia, how are folks handling the snow? This is a very serious situation. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you with your Storm Watch coverage. We begin in central and eastern Canada. Just take a look at how big this system really is. The blues, that's your snow. The pink, that is your freezing rain. Road conditions absolutely treacherous. And I know a lot of university students are heading back to school in the city of Montreal and Ottawa. And slow-going conditions on the roads, certainly. So do make sure you plan a little bit of extra time if you are heading back to school. And I'm just going to get my producer, April, to just help me with the clicker. There we go. And Montreal also in that winter storm warning. Quebec City, that is where we are looking at the freezing rain warning as well. And moving into our maritime provinces, widespread warnings, including wind, rainfall, winter storm. It's a little bit of everything with this system, and that's a similar story as we head further to the north towards Newfoundland. The wind, that's going to be a big situation as we move into the overnight hours. We're looking at sustained winds between 40 and 60 kilometers per hour along the southern shores, but the gusts will be exceeding that 100-kilometer-per-hour mark. So it is quite a big situation through central Canada, and we also have snow squall watches and warnings in place, including for the city of Stratford, and that is where we find the lovely Kasia. Very difficult shoveling conditions. It really weighs down that snow. Whoever was filming that, I really hope you stayed safe with your back, because that looked pretty heavy. Thanks so much for tuning into the Weather Network. Michelle Mackey joining you. The big story through Ontario, of course, the snow squalls. Watches and warnings are in place for the highlighted areas, and here's why. We do have a shift in the wind direction. It's coming from the west through the evening hours, and it is quite cold air. It's ripping across the lakes. The lakes still not frozen over. They're relatively warm in comparison to the air aloft. the perfect ingredients for lake effect snow squalls. Here's how much we can expect moving into the start of your work and school week. The highest amounts up near Sault Ste. Marie and the Bruce Peninsula, but as we stretch down towards southern Ontario, including the city of Stratford, looking at generally about 2 to 5 centimeters. And Stratford, that is where we find Kasia Badurka. Now, Kasia, looking like a winter wonderland, but I don't think driving on the roads would be such a nice experience. Really just stuck. It's a parking lot on the Sea to Sky Highway, so do make sure driving through some of those mountain passes, you give yourself a little bit of extra time. Let's check in with our satellite and radar. The greens, that's where we're seeing the rain. So Victoria really picking up on some heavy rain, but Vancouver right in the middle. We're seeing some transitioning, some freezing rain. We're also seeing wet snow, higher elevations. We could be seeing more snow accumulate by the evening hours. And as such, we do have winter storm warnings in effect for portions of the south coast, but in higher elevations, Williams Lake, for example, that's where we have our snowfall warning. Here's why. We have this Pacific system rolling in off the ocean. We have reinforced Arctic air. That's why we're seeing the snow. But the red line here, that is your warm front. We're seeing warm Pacific air flood into the region for the overnight, and that is why we are seeing the transition from snow to rain as we head into the start of your work and school week. We really are talking about quite impressive amounts of rain, but before we get there, this is the snow that we can expect through the interior. Places like Kamloops, 25 to 40 centimeters of snow on tap. But the rainfall, Victoria, we're looking at about 30, 60 millimeters, higher amounts as we head to Vancouver. Now, we want you to connect with us. Find us on Twitter, upload your photos and videos. More Storm Watch after this.